Hello friends, we'll be discussing the concept of law of variable proportion, whereby we'll be discussing the shorthand analysis of production here. Now, as we have discussed that we'll be talking about, or rather we'll be discussing about a small concept which is known as law of variable proportion. Now, the term itself, variable and proportion, are basically related to some variable consonants and related to that the proportion that it has to be taken into consideration. This is something that we'll be discussing right now. So let's go on to the theoretical part and understand how exactly these proportions or rather this law functions here. Now, this will be a short-run analysis on the production concept. So basically the production concept that we have discussed in the previous videos, we'll be doing a short-run analysis on them. Now, the law of variable proportion is a modern approach to the law of diminishing returns or the law of returns. Now, this law of variable proportion discusses, or rather it speaks about the advanced or rather the newest approach that we can have towards the diminishing law or rather the law of returns that we have discussed earlier. It is now usually called the law of variable proportion. This is the basic name or rather the common name that we have for this specific topic. Now, it can be also called as the law of diminishing marginal product or diminishing marginal returns or simply diminishing returns. So, there are basically three names. You can basically or rather you can rarely commonly call it as law of diminishing returns itself. You need not have any more names written to it. So, basically it is something which speaks about diminishing returns. Returns or the satisfactions that we're talking about whenever it keeps on going down and down and down. Hence, it is known as diminishing in terms. Now, the law of variable proportion shows the production function with one input factor variable while keeping the other input factors constant. Now, here, this specific law of proportion speaks about or shows that how one variable factor or rather input factors, there are a lot of input factors that we have learned about earlier. It was land, labor, capital, wealth, etc. Out of all these variable or rather out of all these input factors, if one is variable, so basically supposing we have like 3 and 1, here this 1 will be variable which will be constantly changing and the other one or the other 3 will be constant, for example. So this is constant, this is variable. Now when it has one variable factor, based on that variable factor, this is all input factor that we're talking about. So this 1 and 3, this is completely related to inputs. So when you have all these inputs, one is variable, one is constant, or rather one is variable and other are constant, no matter how much ever figures or rather how much ever factors that we're talking about. But out of these all input factors, if one is constant or rather one is variable and the others are constant, how exactly this law of proportion is supposed to be utilized is what we'll be understanding in the upcoming videos here. So this law of variable proportion or rather short run analysis on the production gives you the details, or rather this is just a small concept whereby it will give you the meaning of what exactly we'll be dealing with. This is not a complete concept. This is just an introduction to the concept that we'll be dealing with. There are savior or rather there are various isoquants, there are various technologies, there are various terms and principles that you have to understand when you go or rather when you understand this specific law of variable proportion. Now, the reason why this is known as proportion, as you can see, I've mentioned here 1 and 3. So basically it is 1. We can call it as 1 is to 3. We can call it as 1 is to 4, whereby 1 stands for or rather it states the details of the variable input factor, whereas the other 3 and 4 speaks about the constant factor. So the other things remaining same. If this thing changes, how is the law of variable proportion going to react? Or how exactly the diminishing returns change, exactly all these details with all these factors are supposed to be compared. Now, for example, if you have to take one factor, you can take either land to be constant or rather you can take land to be variable. You can take capital to be variable, you can take money to be variable, you can speak about labor being variable and other things remaining constant. So when you take each of these factors to be variable, how exactly diminishing return changes, what is the effect of it, in terms of the production and the demand that is supposed to be considered according to that. All these details you get to know when we speak about this. So these are the things that you need to understand. Right now we'll be discussing only about these concepts in the upcoming video. So right now this is just an introduction to give you a basic idea about what exactly we'll be dealing with and how exactly this will function in near future. So this is all for the video. Thank you.